everyone, and welcome to our December show at Waterstone Gallery. We have an exciting group show up this month entitled In This Moment, and it's an interpretation that every one of our members has taken personally and responded to these unusual circumstances that we've been living through since March, being the pandemic, the political upheaval, and climate crisis, and everything else. So we also, since it's Giving Tuesday today that we're filming this, we also want to mention that we're doing this show to support the Oregon Food Bank, who's kind of doing a fantastic job right now coping with the amount of food insecurities that we're seeing since the outbreak of this pandemic. So 15% of the proceeds from this show will be donated to them. And we have a quick video from the Oregon Food Bank that we're going to watch and then come back and talk to our artists. Do you want to tell us about the work that you made and how this theme of in this moment was interpreted or represented by you?
I can. This is not a piece I made here. It's one of those very many pieces I wish I made. But what I have been working on are these, I call them lanterns, and they actually quite literally are lanterns. It's hard to tell, but there's a little electric tea light in here, remote controlled for your convenience. But I've been playing with these lanterns and the concept of paper lanterns. This is made from paper, cotton paper that I then wax with encaustic medium that I make myself. And it's marked with graphite and pastels and embossed. And these kind of are artifacts from this, I don't know, artifacts from my imagination, I guess. There seems to be an imaginary world gelling in my imagination, and these are artifacts from there. But all summer I was wondering, why am I making these lanterns? And it didn't really make sense, didn't click until the sun started going down sooner. And we started entering this dark time in so many ways. And it kind of became this nice little metaphor for the role of art and the spark and creating light in the darkness, no matter how small, and the aesthetic experience. And somehow all of that comes together into these lanterns that also smell really good. So once we had mentioned that the show was about, in this time, that this seemed like a prescient thing to have around one in this time.
And is this your first shot at making lanterns?
Yeah, this kind of run of lanterns is the beginning. I've been working in the 2D with the paper and the wax, and I make really small things and really big things. But I guess it was a natural progression. I got curious about folding the paper and started folding them into shapes, and it became obvious once I had that void that it should be filled with light. And it's at that point that I realized I do not have the ability to make these plinths. I wanted them on wooden plinths. Yeah. So I found a great carpenter to share the work with. And he's been building me these gorgeous plinths. And they actually have a little space for the candles in there. And I put them on there. It wasn't until I saw the plinths and made the first prototype for a plinth that it really all clicked. And so now when I get the wooden plinths to put them on, I get super motivated, and the lanterns appear. So it's really a neat dance. Like, they were kind of nascent lanterns, maybe lanterns. I saw the base, the wooden base, and it was like, yes, these are lanterns. This is what they look like.
And I love the face, and I think some of the other lanterns, this one, this image doesn't, but the others have this really graphic red dot on them. Is there like is there something behind that, or just
the red, well, it's a circle of all kinds shows up in a lot of my work. And I actually refer to the circle as an owl, even though it looks a lot, for all the world, like an astronomical artifact, like the sun or the moon, which maybe it is. But there's something about the owl. I'm not sure exactly. I'm working on it. That's why I have to make this art. But it's something about owls and predation and death and the life cycle. And the moon is like an owl watching us. And there's something going on there. So this owl and the idea of the circle shows up everywhere. And sometimes it's big and embossed. Sometimes it's small and cold or small and hot. But it's some kind of circle of like life, Ouroboros, sun, moon, owl thing. You can even see one here on this this lantern, this little circle.
Yeah, and the lines are also really kind of, are those engraved in, or?
No, these are actually with graphite, and these show up also on all my work. There's always owls and circles, owls, and then these lines, which are inspired, believe it or not, by the contrails that appear over my house. I live out in the country, and the planes fly really high. Back when they were, remember airplanes, Minnie? They were machines that could fly, and you'd sit in flying machines.
Somewhere in my distance.
Right, 4 feet from a vector, and you'd sit and fly. And they make these beautiful lines in the sky above my house, and they would drift and change, and it just became part of my vocabulary immediately. As soon as I started mark making and making art, the contrails showed up. So they're there also. And pretty much all lanterns, there's lots of little things you could, if you wanted to geek out on the lanterns, you could look closely, and I think you can pick them up. I'm fine with that. Look around them, give them a whiff. But all of them have little things on them that you can find across them all, like owls, these contrails, there's little bird drawings that show up on all of them. Or most of them, so you can hunt around and find.
I like the depths and the symbolism that kind of comes through on them, and that's kind of like this natural, almost independent language of your own that's kind of flowing through all of them, and I think that's pretty interesting too.
Dig that. Like an alphabet that's the same alphabet, I just recombine, very slowly add new elements.
Yeah, it's like it's like seeing, it's like reading a book, or it's like, oh, so as one goes from one piece of yours to the other, it's almost like there's a progression over there. And I found
that's a good point. I hope that's the experience, that you can kind of create your own narratives from looking at them, because they are all from the same place. There is a narrative there, and I don't know what it is either, but there's something going on between the 2D and the 3D work.
Yeah, so much of that is subconscious, right? And it just comes out. It comes like you were talking about airplanes, and you've got these lines over there, and you're probably not seeing as many flying overhead right now.
It's right. But it's in there. It becomes the alphabet. The first show I ever had, I called the alphabet of everything.
Yeah,
that's what I see. I'm recombining.
That's so exciting. Thank you, Corey. Thank you for sharing these with us. And I'm sure they look fantastic lit up.
They really do. We have them lit up in the gallery.
I'm looking forward to seeing them. And I'm going to pose the same question to Shu-Ju, who I know also has a lot of symbolism and story embedded in her painting. So Shu-Ju, how did you interpret this theme of in the moment?
Well, quite literally. So yeah, my 2 pieces in this show are literally about the events that happened this year. 2 events, and this piece that you're seeing. Yeah, 2 of the events that happened this year. And the one that you're seeing now is called Navigating Through Fire and Smoke. The Clackamas County wildfires really impacted us, all of us in Multnomah County. But we were very close to the evacuation zones. We were just 2 blocks north of level 1 evacuation. Oh, and so, I was packed and ready. I had all the animal crates ready. I had their food. They're all on prescription diets. I had their food ready. I had all our documents packed. It was, and because we only have one car we only have one car. and we filled it up with all the animal crates.
Yeah.
The choice of, I didn't really have the choice of deciding what to take. We basically couldn't take anything. So, but it really got me thinking about what if I could save a few things? What would I save? So that's really, in terms of navigating, we ended up not having to evacuate. So we weren't navigating literally through the fire and smoke, but more like navigating through our lives.
Yeah.
What would I take with me if I could? So yeah, and over the last couple of years, I've been playing with collage a lot. That's one of those things that I've just always been terrible at, really, really bad at. And I've actually been posting a lot of my collage practice on Instagram for a while, and most of them are pretty bad. But something kind of clicked this summer, and this is the collage. It's part collage and part painting. I painted, the smoke is collaged on, but everything else is painted. But something definitely clicked, and I'm not sure what it is. If I just got enough practice and I suddenly got it, or actually more likely, I saw Martha Fanschmidt's collages,
Yes.
and they were so wonderful. And I looked at them, I thought, she knows how to do collage, and I can feel something from that. So I kind of, I don't know what it was exactly that I learned by seeing those collages, but I learned something, and it was after that that I did this piece. But I mean, I should have given Corey a little bit of warning. Maybe he could have put in one of Martha's pieces in here. This piece doesn't look anything like Martha's, but something clicked for me.
Yeah.
Come in and see Martha's.
But anyhow, so let's see. So yeah, like I say, this was really just about me thinking about navigating through our lives, what's important, and trying to figure that out. And I'm not sure that I really figured it all out, but when when push comes to shove, you really have to think about those things. And fortunately, we didn't have to evacuate. The other piece that's in the show is a little bit sculptural, and I don't have a photograph of it, but it's more about the Black Lives Matter protests, and I made prayer flags out of vintage postcards, which I then silkscreen printed airplane flying a banner that says Black Lives Matter on the postcards. And all the postcards are all, iconic American landscapes. And it's a prayer flag. But yeah, no, I interpreted the theme quite literally. And there you have it.
Wow, I love the is that a compass that you have on painted on, or is that like a directional marker, or
right? They're compass roses. Yeah, they're called compass roses. So traditionally, in old maps, they would indicate the directions with different symbols.
Yeah.
And I did not do that here. Instead, they're kind of on fire. Mm-hmm. And they're also not oriented to any direction because I wanted them to not be oriented. But yeah, the compass roses, I think they're quite beautiful.
They are. They're so graphic. I love how they look.
Yeah. So if you look at old maps,
yeah.
Some of them are very elaborate.
Yeah. So is collage now that you feel that you've conquered this collage, is that something that you see yourself doing a lot more of, or do you feel like
so?
Okay, I've been there, I've done that, I'm done?
No, it's still a challenge. It's still a challenge. I don't know what it was that clicked for me. So I'm still having to figure that out. So yeah, I've definitely not conquered it.
I would love to jump in, because little did I know that there's actually a real correlation between Shu-Ju's piece and mine. And I'd love to talk about that.
Okay.
So I was also really impacted by the wildfires. I have worked with grids in my work for many years, and in many ways, both visible and invisible grids. And I always think of the grid as being this kind of membrane that creates stability and order out of what otherwise can feel like a very disordered existence. And so the stitched grid for me, and often that line ends up being almost invisible. Here it's a little bit more visible, is kind of about representing that order that's behind things. But as the pandemic confined us all to our homes, and then as the murder of George Floyd and the impact of that, the way that these other invisible structures around us were becoming more visible and confining, the way that we were being confined to our homes by this invisible structure, this virus that was all around us, the way that policing and law and order actually is all around us, but not in a objective way. And then the wildfires, which was invisible, but increasingly, I know many other people, and certainly myself, I had a lot of trouble breathing, and day after day, not being able to leave your home and seeing things getting grayer and grayer and darker. And this idea of a grid as being either a neutral or a supporting structure underneath things felt to me like a cage. It felt to me like there are all of these ways where structures like that function. And I may be living a life normally that is privileged in a way where those structures don't confine me, because I live in a part of the world where we have clear air, where we generally have clean air, where I have a lot of agency and freedom as a white woman, but that those structures are oppressive in different degrees, depending on your experience. And so while this really looks like it's, and this is often the case, just looks like this charming applique of natural items, surrounded by this lovely quilted grid, there's actually a lot of anxiety and fear embedded in that. And that's kind of invisible, which to me feels like it's replicating that same experience of not the truth, not necessarily manifesting in a visible way at all times.
Yeah, no, I think the culmination of everything that kind of came together for us, especially here in Portland, left a lot of us feeling a little bit shaken and insecure. And, initially when we shut down with the pandemic, we could still go out for walks. It was the one thing we were allowed to do. We were allowed to go take a walk, and then we had the fire and the smoke, and suddenly you couldn't walk anymore. And it almost felt like our cage was getting smaller and smaller. And and there was this confinement, I think, that was with the protests and the riots, even though those, at least for me, I live quite far away, it was but it was like another cage that was being, I was being shut into, which was more of a mental kind of cage, as opposed to a physical. So I think we found there's different degrees of confinement that we've kind of been dealing with since March, on a physical level, but also on a kind of emotional, psychological level. And I think for some of us, that's kind of affected how we work, how we think about our work. I know Martha's not here, but she said she just suddenly started doing those collages because she felt that she couldn't paint. And I think quite a few of us have looked at different ways of coping and expressing through work. So I'm going to ask Lisa to just tell us, like, Lisa, has your process changed, or did you do anything different with the onset of everything that we've been through?
Yeah, well, I found that my peaceful, quiet working environment, which included my studio and now I realize my home, to sort of get ready to step into that creative space, was invaded by people. My son's at home, learning, going to school online. My husband, started working down in the basement. And, everyone around, I can hear all this noise. My husband is on business calls. Henry needs help managing school. And I thought, okay, I need a reason to get out of home and get into my studio and be in a space where I can't be interrupted. And I had signed up for a workshop, a color class that was going to be in California, and it was canceled, of course, because of the pandemic, but he decided to go online and teach it. So it was a live Zoom class. And so I was in my studio for 2.5 days doing that. And I could really say to Chris and Henry, you cannot disturb me, I'm in school. And that just gave me this freedom. And it was really almost like going away, but almost better, because instead of having to pack up, everything and take my studio with me and fit into the space, into the teacher's studio, I had my whole space and I could work past the class when it ended. And so I found like that online learning really works for me. And I'm like, I think I'm gonna sign up for some more classes. So then here I am now. I have a reason to be in my studio. Henry's in school, Chris is at work, and I'm going to school also. And so I sort of went back to the basics. So I did this color workshop, and then I took almost like a basic design workshop. And you can see some of the elements in the painting. I was really thinking about value, lights and dark, and really clear composition, and then also like a really clear focal point. And so with this painting, I think another thing that changed for me because of the pandemic is I usually plan, a big trip every couple of years. And then the inspiration I get and the material I get from that vacation feeds my practice for a few years. And so right when the pandemic hit, we were just planning to go to France for 2 weeks. So we canceled the trip basically 2 days before we were set to leave. And so it was kind of, had to do a quick, abrupt, turnaround and look at what was around me, and really started walking my neighborhood a lot, and a lot of the alleys and different parts of my neighborhood I'd never been. And I really started thinking about what the concept of home means for people, and is it a safe place, a comforting place? And so in this image, you've got that sort of glowing tent, and that's symbolizing home, whether it's, whether you got out camping this summer or you're in your home. And what else I was going to say? So I was exploring things closer to home and finding inspiration there. And then I also was able to go to my family cabin, which I think of as my second home. And it's a landscape that's so familiar to me. I've been going there since I was 7 years old. And I've never really thought about making art inspired by it. It's in the California Sierra near Tahoe. And I went, after taking this design class, I went there with fresh eyes and really started enjoying the different shapes that I saw there in the granite and the rocks and the docks and the mountains. Normally I'm inspired much more by color, and it's not a very vibrant landscape. I mean, when you first glance at it, it's kind of gray and green. But I mean, as you look closely in the granite, all the roses and the mustards and everything came through. But anyway, like I said, just went there with fresh eyes from this design class. And this piece is also inspired by a trip to this family cabin, and it's called Before Midnight. And every summer we go and we think, we're going to pick a night or a few nights where we're going to go down to the dock and lay on the dock and look up at the stars. And this is during one of the meteor showers that was in August. And usually we find some excuse, I don't know, not to do it. We're playing games, or we're feeling too lazy or tired, or we have to get bundled up, or there's mosquitoes. And this trip, we're like, no, we have to do it. It's, you just have to live in the moment, and you don't know when this is going to happen again and if you're going to be there. And so that's also the title for this piece, is inspired by that. Before midnight is the best time to see the meteor shower. So yeah, my practice has been impacted in several ways, I guess, looking closer to home for inspiration, and then finding inspiration in experimenting and trying new things and learning new skills and techniques.
I love the contrast that you have with the cabin or the door, and then that against the night sky, and the suggestion of the mountains in the background, and it's all, I mean, every layer is just kind of jumping out, especially the way I'm looking at it right now on my screen, and it just looks fantastic. But it's quite exciting what just taking a class can do sometimes. I've signed on to a class, and initially I was hesitant about doing an online Zoom class, but I see your experience has been fantastic, so I hope mine will too. So let's see how that goes. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think, Angelita, you were saying that you went in the opposite direction and dug your heels into what is comforting and you're familiar with. And how did you interpret the theme, and how did it influence your process or not?
Right. Well, I guess I interpreted the theme in this moment as trying to keep myself centered, and work is the one place where I feel like I have some groundedness, some control over what's going on. So when things are going really well, I am definitely in the moment and just thinking about my work, and everything else goes out of the studio. So the two pieces that we have here are glass. I'm a painter as well, but I was particularly moved by all the flowering trees this year. And so when we were allowed to take walks, I took walks and took photographs, and then interpreted that. I did a lot of flowering trees in glass and in paintings as well. And several of those were in the show that I had at Waterstone in June. I guess I feel like the studio has been really a strong respite, a strong sheltering place for me.
Yeah.
And that it is something that I can control and manage when there's so many other things that we have no control over. And so it's been my practice for over 40 years now. And so I would be very lost without that continued routine. So that's what works for me.
I was just going to say that's been a hard thing for me, because I did have more of a routine. And then now I find that I need to just take advantage and grab a couple hours here and a couple hours there. Because I felt like when Henry and Chris were both away at school and work, there was just more time. So I've had to, compress the practice into less time.
I found that some of my best work has come because of residencies, and just thinking of that term residency and then being confined to our homes and trying to reimagine that as a different kind of residency. Like, how do you recapture some of the magic of that other, like what Angelita was talking about, when everything else just goes away and you're just in that spot. And there's almost nothing you wouldn't give to get back in that spot. So how can you build that into your day-to-day life when that life is really altered? It's a challenge, but it's a real balm.
I never realized how much time in the car zaps me of creativity. And now that I used to commute so much, and you think that would be mind-wandering time, but it wasn't. It was something else. And so now that I'm home all the time, I find that I have a lot more fluid imagination. Mm-hmm. Something about the car equals no imagination. I no longer have that expectation.
I think
the other
kind of went into Angelita's mode of just being able to shut everything out finally and just be in the studio and produce work. I think that just happened to me from November onwards, October, November. I think before that, I was just, it was part of what Lisa was saying of suddenly having my space invaded with having my child at home, having a husband at home. And after all these years of being used to having the house to myself, suddenly there were people in the space that I considered my space at this point in time. And I think it takes a lot of discipline to shut everything out, not just within your house, but everything that's happening on the news and everything that's happening online. And every time you talk to a friend who's feeling down, or for me, every time I speak to my parents who are not in the country, who are so far away, and I can't fly back to them, it takes a lot to shut all of that down and find your focus and get back to your practice of creating something. And I think all of us have adjusted or adapted or just gone ahead and done what we've been doing perfectly for 40 years. And I think that's quite commendable. Just in closing, I just want to throw one question out for anyone that thinks they have an answer or a thought about it. How do you feel things are going to be going forward? I know that we're all missing the gallery openings. We're missing the experience of seeing work live as opposed to looking at work online. How do you think we're going to cope going forward in terms of creating a gallery experience for people?
Creatively.
Creatively. Are you looking at just more online shows and more online talking, or do you feel?
I kind of hope not. I dig, obviously there'll be more online everything, but I don't know. I'm biased because I'm sitting in the gallery right now. And I've been working on our website, and seeing the stuff on the web is one thing, and it's actually been breathtaking. I mean, just look at this picture right now of Angelita's work, and that's, I don't know, it makes my mouth water just looking at it. But then being here in the gallery and seeing it, you engage in such a more visceral experience. It's really, that's the encounter. So if we can somehow spread the surface area of the actual encounter, whether it's, you know, cycling people through the gallery or making it more of a events-based thing and keeping it small scale but intimate. But I think the art needs to see us, and we need to see it in real time. And I'm totally willing to experiment and find those ways. And I think people who dig art are willing to, and probably just anyone, because we're all cooped up. So if we can find a way for people to come here and have a can of wine and look at some art and do it safely, thumbs up. So I'm, you know, it's going to be creative and experimental, but that's our jam. We kind of own that space.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
and there will be some righteous parties when we get on the other side of this, celebrating each other, celebrating art, celebrating being in person. There's just so much pent up desire to connect with each other, with the lived experience of the world. And I'm starting, I don't know if that's like, it's not quite a silver lining, but it's like a hint of the possibility of a silver lining that I just am starting to see, like almost being able to think about what that will be like.
Mm-hmm. The art is lonely in the gallery.
Art's meant to be seen.
Yeah, this is all right.
And yeah. Okay, so I think that pretty much sums up today's talk. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Our show is up till the middle of January in this moment. And come in, take a look. We're open Saturdays and Sundays, or call us. Any one of us will be happy to come and show you around and chat with you in person about our work. And support the Oregon Food Bank. Shop locally. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.